Happy New Year, everybody. My name is Greg Massi, and this is episode 20 of The Color of Air, a podcast about the musical journey. So I want to wish everybody a Happy New Year. As I'm recording this, it is January 1st, 2015, and hopefully this will be coming up later on today. So Happy New Year again. It's been a little slow here, getting guests ready. So I decided instead of having a guest on for the 20th episode, I thought I would do something a little different. Actually, I guess it's not totally different because I did a Q&A episode previously, but I put a request out there for some questions. So I got a few questions back that I'd like to address. And also, I figured it'd be a good time to do kind of a top 3 of the year for me in terms of new albums. I'm really skeptical about top 3 or top 5 or top 10 albums of the year and all those, bullshit kind of lists that people put out at the end of the year. So instead, what I'm going to do is, because I usually play 3 songs from a particular guest on an episode, I'm going to give you 3 songs from 3 albums that I think are worthy of merit. And, I want you guys to all check out, because they're all from, independent musicians who are out there busting their ass trying to make a name for themselves. And so I want to do what little I can to support them. Actually, I should say I want to do as much as I can, but given how far this podcast reaches, I don't know how much that is, but I'm going to do my part. Anyway, so hope everybody had a good holiday season. Things have been crazy here at the Massi household. Let me start the podcast with our plugs. You can find us on the web at www.colorofair.com. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/colorofairpodcast. And you can find us on Twitter at The Color of Air. And for any questions or comments or anything, please feel free to contact us at colorofairpodcast@gmail.com. Also, for music, the music I'm involved in with my band Ballaset, please go to www.retconrecordings.com. And, while I'm on the subject of Ballaset, let me send a big thank you to the Femme Metal webzine, who, I sent them a copy of our EP Exordium for review back, I think, around, I don't know, it felt like it was almost the beginning of the year. It was a long time ago. And the review popped up online last week, and I was really happy with it. We got 90 out of 100. And it looks like the Miriam, who's the girl who contacted me about getting it, and I believe the guy who reviewed it, his name is Tony. I believe they're based out of Italy. And for those of you who probably don't follow Ballaset's career too closely, but we've gotten some pretty positive reviews from Italy. There was Michelle Giorgi of The New Noise, who gave us some really glowing reviews for both A Time for Rust and for Exordium. And there was one other Italian website who reviewed us as well. So what I'm really getting at here is I think that we're due to become the David Hasselhoff of Italy. I think that would be something I would be pretty happy with. I can't seem to get much momentum here in the States, but, I wouldn't complain if we had a number 1 album in Italy and Italy only, and got the tour and played over there. That would be great. So if you're in Italy and you're listening, check us out. Thank you for your support. All right. So first things first, let me get us started with some music. So the first album that I want to talk about, it's one that I've talked about before. It's The Red and the Gray by Protean Collective. And I had Matt Zappa on back in October, and he was a wonderful guest. We had a lot of fun doing that interview, and I was really excited. I'm sorry, did I say October? I think it was August I had him on. Anyway, point being, the Protean Collective had a hell of a 2014. They put this album out. They've been getting incredible reviews for it. They've been able to get on some really cool shows, playing with Cynic, playing with Pain of Salvation. So they've just been really doing very well for themselves, and I couldn't be happier because they're all really cool people who who deserve every amount of success they get. They work hard and deserve it. And the Red and the Gray, I mean, I think I talked about it on the Matt Zappa podcast, but I mean, it really blew me away. It was something it was one of those albums where I didn't exactly know what to expect. I wasn't as familiar with them prior to that, so I kind of went into it with kind of no expectations because I didn't know what they were going to sound like, what they'd been working on, and it took me by surprise. It was just a really amazing record. So in no particular order, this is one of the first of my 3 albums of 2014. It's The Red and the Gray by Protean Collective, and the song that I'm going to play for you is called In Waves.
Red-blooded hands won't break
hope you enjoyed the Protean Collective song. I love that song and that album. I can't talk enough about it, I suppose. But I can't just talk about it for the entirety of this this podcast. Otherwise, it'll probably get, pretty boring for the rest of you. So let's start with some questions now. So I got a few sets of questions, so I'll just kind of read them in the order in which I got them. So the first question came from Dylan Sonderman, who I believe submitted a question the last time. And he was like, "Hey Greg, I wanted to ask if you're looking forward to next year's show at the Stone, playing Maudlin of the Well material again, as well as rejoining Kayo for the performance of Choirs of the Eye. As someone who did not discover Maudlin of the Well in time to be able to witness a live performance, and also someone who does not live in an area Kayo is frequently played, I'm already anticipating making the trip to New York for those performances." Cool. Well, thanks, Dylan. And this is something I haven't talked about on the podcast yet, but it was announced, so I can, discuss it. Toby Driver, the man behind Maudlin of the Well, Kayo, guest of this podcast, he's worked pretty closely with the Stone in New York. For those of you who don't know, the Stone is it's kind of a small. It's not really a club per se. It's more of an art space, I guess, is the best way to describe it. It's run by John Zorn, and the idea is it's a place to to promote new music that's happening in the New York area. And every month or every week, he has somebody else, a musician, curate it. And they bring in artists who they want to see or debut new pieces they've been working on. And it's a very cool kind of creative environment for a musician to go there and work on stuff. And so it just got announced that later this year in August, Toby's going to be curating a week at the Stone. And I forget the exact dates off the top of my head. I think it's August 17th. If anything, just check out the Stone website. Just look for the Stone, New York City. And so what Toby decided to do is kind of have a week where he celebrates the entirety of his music career thus far. And it'll be right around the time of 15 years since the release of the first Maudlin album. So, it seemed like kind of a cool idea for him to do. And so what he did was he decided to have one night where we're going to do a Maudlin of the Well reunion show. And most of the original people are going to be involved. Me, Toby, Byron, Taryn, Sam Gutterman on drums, Josh Sipe on guitar. Ron from Kayo is going to be assisting us with bass, and I forget if anybody else is involved. I'm not sure. We haven't really, fine-tuned all the details or the logistics of it, just knowing that we're going to be playing the Stone. And while I have it on the brain, I should probably figure out what day that is to kind of give you all the information. But anyway, to address Dylan's question, because in addition to doing the Maudlin set, Toby is also doing he's doing a couple Kayo sets, and so as such, I'm gonna get the chance to also join Kayo on stage again to do to basically play Choirs of the Eye in its entirety. It's something I did for them a few years ago, and that was a lot of fun just because, even though I'm not in the band anymore, I still really am good friends with those guys, and, I love the music that we did together. So it was a lot of fun for me to kind of get back into it with them. Okay, schedule 2015, and for those of you who are listening at home, you can find this on thestonegyc.com. So the Toby Driver residency at the Stone will be August 25th to the 30th. On August 25th, which is a Tuesday, there'll be 2 shows, 8 and 10 p.m. with Maudlin of the Well. And Mia Matsumiya is going to be playing violin with us. Cool. On August 26th, on Wednesday, Kayo is going to play Choirs of the Eye at 8 o'clock, so I'll be involved with that. And then at 10 o'clock, Kayo is going to play Coyote. On Thursday, August 27th, at 8 o'clock, Toby's going to play Tartarlam, the 60 Metonymies, the first Tartarlam project. And at 10 p.m., he's going to be doing Iknamade, I'm pronouncing that wrong, I'm sure, which was it was something he was working on, I believe it was a dance thing. As well, Kayo is going to be playing Stained Glass, so that's going to be cool too. On Friday, August 28th, 8 o'clock, he's going to be playing some ballads that he's composed for piano and voice. And at 10 p.m., he's going to be playing with his group, The Tanks. And then finally, on August 29th, which is Saturday, the 8 p.m. show is going to be Stern, another guest of the podcast, previous guest. And so Stern's going to play at 8 o'clock. Toby's part of that group. And then at 10 p.m., Kayo is going to do current material, which means probably stuff off of the new album Coffins on IO and some newer material they're working on. So that was a lot of information to give you. So hopefully you're still with me. This is kind of a podcast that's kind of flying by the seat of my pants because editing. Who edits podcasts these days anyway? But so to kind of really address Dylan's question, if I'm looking forward to it, then yes, I'm very much looking forward to it. I was pretty excited to announce this show because I know there's a lot of people clamoring for Maudlin of the Well to do something again, and it's been a lot of fun, talking with the guys, coming up with songs we want to play, getting music from Toby and guitar parts and things like that, and just basically relearning how to play these songs. It really is going to be a lot of fun. So I'm very much looking forward to it. And one thing I did want to address with these shows, though, is that, Dylan mentions how he's looking forward to coming to New York for them. A lot of people have said, well, now that they're playing in New York, I want to book my trip and come see them. And I am all for people coming to see us because I love the fact that, people are fans of ours and want to see it done live. But one thing I want to mention is the Stone is kind of an interesting setup. There's very limited seating. I believe it seats maybe 100 people. And when I say seat, I mean it. There's seats there that you and it's not the kind of thing. I don't know all the logistics yet. I know Toby was maybe thinking that we were gonna have something in place to address this, but I haven't heard anything yet. But in the past, the Stone shows are first come, first serve, meaning you show up, you wait in line, and basically the first 100 people get in, and everybody else, unfortunately, doesn't get in and has to wait until the 10 p.m. show. And each show is treated differently. So you line up for the 8 p.m. show, and then you leave, and then you have to get back in line for the 10 p.m. show. So for any of you who's listening to this and, likes the sound of any of those performances, please be aware that is the situation that I believe is going on. And if I hear anything differently, I will let you know. If we're able to arrange something where people can, buy tickets in advance or something like that, I'll let you know. But I thought it would be good to give you that information ahead of time if you're planning on traveling for that show. So anyway, thanks, Dylan, for that question. So now I'm going to intersperse it with another album. And this album, I think, technically is a 2013 album, but I'm counting it in 2014 because it was a really big deal for me in 2014. It was something that I had never heard before, but was completely blown away by. So the name of this band is Armory. They're a local Massachusetts metal band, and I'd always had heard of them, but I'd never really listened to them or seen them play live. And what happened was they headlined the last night of the Halloween covers nights this year at Ralph's on the Saturday, and they did an Iron Maiden set. And for those of you who've listened to this podcast, you know Iron Maiden is my favorite band, hands down. And so going into watching them perform, I was saying, well, I'm either going to be really, really excited if they... Actually, I shouldn't say excited. My way of thinking was I wasn't sure if I wanted to see them, because being such a huge fan of Iron Maiden, if they completely sucked, then I would be really mad. But if they were completely amazing, then I would be really jealous that it wasn't me up there playing those Iron Maiden songs, because being on stage covering Iron Maiden songs has been a dream of mine since I was in high school. I used to have these, daydreams about playing at a school concert in the school auditorium and playing, Power Slave or something like that, and sharing this amazing music with other people. And as such, and that never happened, but so you can imagine that I had these kind of mixed feelings going into the Armory show, and truth be told, they blew me away, and I ended up not feeling too jealous, but really just being happy that there are people who did this band justice as well as they did, from the guitar parts to the vocal parts, the guitar solos. They really paid Iron Maiden respect with the honor and care that they did in creating the set that they did, and all the stuff they learned and perfected for it. So being blown away by their performance, I decided to go pick up their albums. And I'd always heard that I think that they were kind of a power metal band, and I love power metal. I know when I first started Ballast, people kind of assumed that I was going to go in a power metal direction, just because it was something I had loved for so many years, and they assumed that maybe that was the direction I wanted to go in. But obviously that's not the case. But power metal is still something that I truly love, and I've also been rediscovering recently. I put it down for a couple of years, didn't really listen to much, but getting back into it and discovering new bands, and just really having it's a fun genre of music, you know what I mean? And so listening to Armory, I've been obsessively listening to their album Empyrean Realms, which came out last year, and it blew me away. I mean, it's even with the best power metal bands that I really love, like Blind Guardian, who else? Gamma Ray, things like that, Rhapsody. It's very rare that a power metal band has a completely flawless album. I mean, I think there's a couple flawless Blind Guardian albums, but there's always some, stinker of a song. Especially when a band thinks that they have to pack in, 60, 70 minutes worth of music on a CD. There's always going to be one or two songs you skip over. But Empyrean Realms is pretty flawless from start to finish. I can listen to the entire album, finish it, and then start it up again, which is something I haven't done in a long time with records. And there's all sorts of influences. There is the normal power metal influence. Their lead singer reminds me a lot of Tobias Sammet from Edguy, mixed with a little bit of Jeff Tate from Queensryche. The guitar players, I mean, you can definitely hear the Iron Maiden influence in some of their solos and such, so you can see how they were a perfect fit to cover them. There's some really cool keyboard parts, keyboard solos, the atmospheres they do, the tones they use. There's a lot of care put into it. There's definitely some video game influence in there as well, and they definitely stray from kind of the normal power metal kind of templates every now and again, and really throw in some, prog metal influences here and there. And it's just a really well-rounded album that is worthy of anybody's listen. And again, they're an independent local band here, making amazing music. So that's what I'm here to promote. So let me introduce you to Armory. And I will say I'm hopefully going to get them on the podcast soon. I've been in contact with them. We haven't really nailed down a date yet, but I'm hoping that in the next couple months we get Armory on here because I'd like to talk to them more. But until then, I want you to check out this really cool tune off of Empyrean Realms. This song is called Beyond the Horizon. All right. Beyond the Horizon, Armory. How cool is that, right? Pretty cool. Um, yeah, like I said, I love that band. Everything that they do on that album, Empyrean Realms, is amazing. So I had to promote it just a little bit on this, even though it's technically not a 2014 album. But let me digress. Let me go on to some more questions. So I got an email from Emil Ekholm, who also, I believe, asked me questions on the first question and answer pod. And he sent a few questions, so I thought it'd be cool to go through them. The first one, as a musician, what do you think is the greatest thing that you could theoretically accomplish? Playing at a sold-out famous venue, having your music studied at the conservatories of music, having an album sell multiple millions of copies, having an album included in the Library of Congress's National Recording Registry, or something else? Or more realistically, what have you done as a musician that you are the most proud of? That's an excellent question, Emil. I think any musician, I think, you have to look at what you do with small goals. And those are the things that really kind of get you excited. And at least that was the case with me. When we did Malden in the Well, my first goal was, I want to have a CD out with my name on it. And sure enough, My Fruit Psycho Bells comes out. I have a CD with my name on it, give to my parents. So then, that seemed to me at the time to be kind of the height of, this is what it means to be, successful. And then, it was, silly things like, I was really excited when people would come up to us at metal fests and ask for autographs. That was a really cool thing, because, you grow up being kind of a fanboy of music, and when someone else kind of approaches you in the same way you would approach somebody, that just was really cool. Doing an interview with somebody, calling somebody and doing an interview that got put into a print magazine, being in a print magazine, being in Metal Maniacs, that was a big deal for me. So it's what I'm getting is there's like little things. It's like, then it's like, okay, we're playing at this festival and we get to have badges, backstage passes. That's like, really cool. You're like, whoa. And then going on tour, that was the next thing. And, when Kayo started going, we finally got the chance to go on tour. So I got to live, that dream. And, so I guess my long-winded answer to your question is I don't know specifically what will make me the most happy or feel the most accomplished right now. Those things that I just mentioned are things that have been really, really cool. Putting out the first Battle Set record, it was cool being on a Malden in the Well CD and a Kayo CD, but putting out a CD that I put my time and effort and songs into and having that released was a really big deal for me. Playing the first gig as Battle Set was a big deal for me. Getting released on vinyl was a big deal for me. So it's, instead of looking at it like, I would love to play, these festivals, or I want to play here, or sell this many copies. I mean, really, I just want, I think what it really comes down to when I think of all those things that I just mentioned, the greatest success you can have as a musician is just when you feel that your art, the amount of work you've put into making a record is appreciated. And those are all signs of that. Having somebody think the world of you, that they'll put your CD out, even if it's yourself. Having someone come up to you and tell you they're a fan of your work. It, never ceases to be old for me. I enjoy that. Being able to go on tour, being able to play various places, and as it builds, even if it doesn't build to, Royal Albert Hall status, along the way, those kinds of things just show that somebody appreciates what you do. And I think at the end of the day, that's really all you can hope for, is that you have somebody who appreciates what you do. So hope that answers your question. And then he asks, do you think digital music sales devalue the concept of an album, as it typically contains less album art and liner notes and other media that strengthen the character of any given album? Or is it a good thing that music should prove itself solely on its own merits? This is a great question because I know we kind of briefly talked about it a little bit with the Toby episode. Hold on one second. By the way, unlike my last Q&A pod, not drinking alcohol, just drinking water today. But the digital music question is always hard because we're in such a crazy state of affairs in terms of what musicians do. I mean, look back and listen to the various podcast interviews I've done. Listen to my interview with Matt Stevens. Listen to my interview with Eliron. Listen to my interview with Toby, and you'll hear various perspectives about what's going on. Eliron will tell you, he's making more money now. He's making money off the music business, and he feels that there hasn't been a loss in how much his art contributes to what an album's an album is. So so there's all sorts of different opinions. I think there is something to be said for the devaluation of music. I mean, I'll just use an example. I was at my sister's house for Christmas, and she was pulling out the different vinyl she had because my niece got a record player for Christmas. And I'm looking through her vinyls, and I see albums that I really love: Marillion, Ultravox. These 80s bands that I really enjoy, and my sister enjoyed at the time too. And I sit there and I'm looking at her copy of Ultravox's Vienna album, and I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And I'm looking at the back, and it's very, it's not in-depth, artwork, but it's just you get lost in the aura of it. Same thing with my father-in-law got me a copy of Queen's A Night at the Opera on vinyl, and again, not the hugest, most intricate design, but it's easy to get lost in that album cover, just looking at it and looking at the different features up close, especially when it's on vinyl. You open it up and you see the lyrics and the liner notes, and that's an experience that I had growing up with CDs and tapes and such, and to a lesser extent albums, because they were kind of going out when I started buying music. But on the counter to that is, I'm looking at this Ultravox album that my sister had, and I said, I haven't heard this album. So what do? I go on to Spotify, and they have the entire Ultravox discography there for streaming. So I just hit, save, and I have every single Ultravox album on my phone at my disposal. So there is a certain sense of devaluation in terms of that used to be, in order for me to get an entire band's discography, I would have to save up for weeks. But, that kind of immediacy is cool in one sense, but also, it's overload. And, so people aren't really giving albums the time that they had that they used to. Because it used to be, you'd get an album, and you'd have to choose which album do you want, and you're stuck with it until you could afford to get a new one. So you have to make it good. And sometimes that was I can give you two examples. When I graduated college, I went to Europe with a friend of mine. We went to Italy, and I didn't have a Discman at the time. All I had was a Walkman, and I had to travel light, so I couldn't bring gazillion tapes with me. So I just brought 3 tapes, and they were mixtapes. And the albums that they had on them were Iron Maiden's Brave New World, Excalibur by Gravedigger, and Crimson Glory's Astronomica. Or at least a few songs of Crimson Glory's Astronomica. I don't think I put the whole album on there. And so for 2 weeks in Italy, that was what I listened to, just those albums. And so as a result, I got to know those albums pretty in depth because, that was all I had to listen to. Same thing was when I was on tour with Kayo. I did have a Discman by that point, but again, couldn't bring a lot of CDs with me. So in 2006, I ended up bringing Iron Maiden's, what the heck is it called? A Matter of Life and Death. And I know that album so intricately now because it was the only thing I had to listen to. And so, I may not have liked it the first listen, I can't remember, but I kept giving it a chance because it was the only thing I had. And, you learn to either appreciate it, which I did, or, if I didn't like it, if it didn't grow on me, then, I probably would have, tried to find something else. So that kind of thing is lost. Definitely with the music. So, but, there's I don't know the best way to solve the problem. There's so many different things going on. So, I don't know if that answers your question, Emil, but I think that the one thing you can take away from the digital music thing is that we are in a state of flux, and I do believe that eventually there will be something that comes and kind of will benefit everybody through the digital music sales. I mean, it exists, the technology exists, so we should find a way to work with it instead of just, trying to get rid of it and being like, well, I liked it the way it was before, so we should do it that way. It's like, unfortunately, that's not the way the world works. This new technology is here, and yeah, it's in a pretty weird place right now. But you have to have faith that something will come of it. All right. So, next question from Emil. Is there any cardinal rule of songwriting that you would never break? Alternatively, are there any you're interested in breaking, perhaps approaching serialism or microtonality? Well, I think it's been pretty established with the music I've done that, with the bands I've been involved with, that I'm of the belief that there is no such thing as a rule in music. I think when you're composing or you're songwriting, it can sometimes be okay for you to say, okay, well, I'm going to specifically write this for this instrumentation. To give yourself parameters for which you can work in. And as you're working on something, if it doesn't work, then, by all means change it. But this idea of having rules or songwriting rules, it's all kind of bullshit, in my opinion. I mean, you could argue till the cows come home about what makes a great song. Does a song need to have 2 verses, 2 choruses, a bridge, these kinds of things, but, there's examples to be had of, of everything working. You know what I mean? Like, you could say, well, I prefer when a song has a verse, chorus structure with a bridge in the middle, guitar solo. And you can probably give plenty of examples of bands who work within those parameters and make really amazing songs. But then you have bands who do something completely different outside of that, and you realize, well, that structure works for certain people, but, you can also go outside of it. So, also being quote unquote metal, that was something we struggled with for a long time with Model in the Well, because, we loved heavy metal, we loved playing it, but we also loved doing different stuff. And, it's a tough thing to be like, well, we're not metal enough, but what does that even mean? Why can't we use, metal as kind of a way we work on stuff without having to rely solely on it? And so, I mean, there's always rules to be broken. And, when you ask about serialism or microtonality, that's never been something I've been completely interested in, or I've never studied enough to even make an attempt at. I mean, my thing with music has always been, I sit down, I pick up a guitar, I sit at a keyboard, I sit at a drum, or any kind of thing which makes music of any kind, and I just see if something comes out. And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But at the same time, I'm always just sitting there playing, because that's the true joy for me. It's just playing music, and whatever form it takes, that's the form it takes. Sometimes I like writing in a more metal style, sometimes I like writing in a more acoustic style. And it's not, these aren't rules that I'm setting for myself, that this is what Ballaset's going to be, this is what my music is going to be. It's just letting whatever happens happen, and being emotional about it, and caring about what you do, and wanting to express something, and whatever path it takes to express it, that's all good in my book. And then the last question he writes is, are there any music critics that you really trust and whose articles you enjoy reading? And for that, I'd have to say, not really. Well, at least I don't know any off the top of my head. I actually don't read a lot of music journalism. I find it kind of, it's hard for me to read it. I don't like being told what I'm supposed to think about a certain band or a certain artist. I read Ballaset reviews, obviously, and we've had some good ones. Like I said, Michelle from New Noise was really good. But I haven't really read a lot of his other reviews, so I can't say like, oh, I really enjoy him as a reviewer. I just know as a reviewer of our material, I really enjoy what he does. And even though he writes in a different language, which gets roughly translated for me, I'm able to tell, how he's feeling about the music we're writing, and that's really great. Same thing goes with Sea of Tranquility. There's not one particular writer there, but when they reviewed our music, I thought they gave us a pretty fair and honest review, which I really appreciated. And Sarah Letourneau, a friend of ours, who she used to write for a female-fronted web scene, which slips my mind right now. She's no longer doing the reviews. But I thought she was really good about what she did as a reviewer. I read a couple of hers, and I thought that she was rare in that she really seemed to sit with an album for a while before she decided to review it, and that makes all the difference, because the way you listen to an album on the first listen compared to the way you listen to it on the final, after a few listens, is completely different. So she was really good too. But again, I never really read all of her stuff, so I can't really say like, oh yeah, she's, all these reviews. I can't say like all of her reviews are the same, but those are just a few people whose work I noticed. But for the most part, I don't really pay attention to music journalism. It just Pitchfork. These kinds of things. Even my friends' bands, I try not to read too much of, or read too much into. I like when they get good reviews. I do. I like when other people value their work the way I value their work. But it's just, I really haven't been the biggest journalism guy for music. So those are the questions from Emil. So thank you, Emil. I appreciate that a lot. And I had one more set of questions to read before I get to my top 3 album, my third top 3 album of the year, or 2 years since the Armory album was last year. So this next set of questions comes from Lloyd Martin, who, good friend of ours, who he heads up the band Marin. Ballaset did a show with them last year. I contributed a guitar solo to the first Marin EP, and good friend of the band, good dude, awesome music. I always recommend you check them out. Marin, Mairin. So he wrote a few questions in as well. So his first one is, what emotions and mental states do you go through to develop the concept for Ballaset? Are they based in actual events or completely fictional? And that's a good question. Nobody really ever thinks to ask me about Balisette stuff. With good reason. I know that there's so much lore and mystery with Maudlin and Kayo that those are usually people's first questions for me. But for Balisette, the music is intensely personal. A lot of times the music does come from actual events. I don't necessarily write lyrics specifically about events. I usually tend to take the path of, okay, here's an emotion I felt, here's a situation I was put in. Now, how can I deal with this in a lyrical way without, every one of my songs sounding like, some sort of emo kid, their diary, being like, oh, today this person really pissed me off, blah, 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 blah. And, and it's a learning process. I'm not saying I'm the best at it. But it's something I've been working on, specifically in terms of the second Balisette album, which we've been kind of, working on off and on again for the last few years. My goal with that album was to create a concept album, and what I found was, as I created characters and created a storyline, when I first started, I went pretty, fantastical with it, and and I found. The more and more I worked on it, the more and more I chipped away those kind of elements and really honed in on actual life events, actual relationships with people I've had in my life and how I reacted to certain things. And then I tried to bring them into the story so that, when you listen to it, I don't necessarily want you to think, oh, this is, what happened to Greg in 2012 put into lyrics. It's more taking these, isolated events and trying to, bring them into this world I'm creating and hopefully make something interesting, which, there's a lot of that, in science fiction and fantasy where, a lot of things come specifically from, someone's real life, but then you kind of set them in this different thing. And so it doesn't feel like a autobiography. And then he writes, when you write solos and contribute to others' albums, do you express yourself emotionally or do you only try to accommodate what the artist wants only? That's another good question because I have contributed a couple solos to different things over the last couple of years. Obviously, Marin contributed to them. Obviously, and as well, I contributed to my old lead singer Lauren's album and to Nick Hudson's albums the last couple of years. And when I write a solo, it's a couple different things. Emotion's a big thing for me because I'm not the best speaker, as you can probably tell by me being the sole person on this podcast today. But the way that I express myself comes out a lot better in terms of a guitar solo. I can communicate my emotions better through a guitar solo than I can through my words, and so it feels like playing a guitar solo is kind of like my second voice or my true voice, and so when I'm writing my own solos or I'm writing a solo for somebody else's thing, I'm really just reacting, especially, if the music makes me feel a certain way. I'm going to kind of, comment on that by writing something which, reflects well with that song. And, as opposed to it being just like a shred fest, which I can't really do, but, I really want to put a stamp on it where, you feel like, it's me playing that guitar solo. But also I want it to not take away from everything that's around it. So I hope that answers that question. But also actually on that too, I also do take direction from, if an artist wants a specific sound, when they're asking me to write a solo for them, I will always try to, honor their what the vision they have for a solo too. Again, this goes back to songwriting and setting up parameters for yourself. It's like, okay, I'm going to write a solo for this song, but I'm going to allow myself the following things. I usually use distortion on a solo. Maybe for this solo I won't. I know that was the case with a thing I contributed to Nick Hudson's Letters to the Dead album. He definitely wanted something more sparse. So I had sent out an idea, and he said, well, can you make it even more sparse? And so I really worked at it, and, it gave me, again, like a framework parameter to work within, but then to express myself within those parameters was, a pretty big thing for me. All right, then the next question Lloyd wrote, or the last question is, what steps did you take and how did you develop Greg's tuning? Is it based on a scale or a random chord you play and decided to tune your guitar to accommodate that particular chord or voicing to other chords? I don't know if I read that right, sorry. But the gist of it is, for those of you who don't know, I use a lot of alternate tunings. It's something I've been doing ever since I've been in Malden of the Well and Kayo, where I really got into the idea of doing alternate tunings by learning those songs and realizing how you could take a tuning and really use it to allow yourself this kind of the ability to create these new and interesting kind of musical movements without having to completely relearn. You can play a standard kind of bar chord in one tuning, and then in standard tuning, but then in a different tuning it creates a completely different set of notes, a completely different set of overtones. Then you add in open strings, and you can create really interesting, cool chord progressions, which normally are very hard for you to accomplish on a standard tuned guitar. So that's something I've always been a fan of, mostly because I'm lazy. And I don't like having to relearn the instrument every single time I put myself in a different tuning. I would rather just play these kind of similar shapes in different tunings, get complete and use my ear to figure out where it's going to go next. And I don't always know every single note on the fretboard is, but I try to go by ear and try to again, work within the parameters of the tuning. When he mentions Greg's tuning, that's kind of I also call it Ballast standard tuning. And it's a tuning I used a lot when I was writing songs for the first album, as well as the Exordium EP and other songs which have never actually even seen the light of day. It was a tuning I discovered. It's D-A-D F, C, E, from low string to high string. And how I came up with that tuning was when I was in college. Just messing around. A lot of open or alternate tunings people use are open chords. You can do the Rolling Stones are a good example. They use open G, open C. A lot of blues musicians use those tunings as well, especially when you're playing slide guitar. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to take a chord and make it my open tuning a chord that sounds really cool to me. And so at the time, my favorite chord, I know this is going to sound completely nerdy, but my favorite chord was a minor 9 tuning. Playing jazz music, I just really loved the sound of a minor 9. And so I said, okay, well, how can I accomplish this on a guitar in terms of an open tuning? So it occurred to me to use D. And so the notes in order from low to high, you have D, you have A, which is the fifth, then D, the octave, F, the minor third, C, the minor 7, and E, the 9. So when you strum those chords together, those strings together, you get this really beautiful minor 9 chord in your open. And the other benefit to it is that the D and the A is kind of like a drop D tuning, so it makes doing power chords pretty easy. So if you want to get really aggressive with that tuning, you can have these really pretty chords when you play the open strings and when you kind of mess around with chord shapes. But then if you want to get it into kind of a more rocking metal kind of thing, just focus on those two strings and get, some power chords in there. So it was a pretty cool thing for me. It took me a while to kind of work with it. I used it then, but I didn't really use it more until, probably 2002, 2003, 2004, when I started really focusing on my songwriting. And I found myself able to really kind of get inspired with it. So, but, I also use other tunings, and it's pretty much the same way. I just look for an interesting chord and do it that way. Other people don't. I don't know how Toby comes up with the tunings he uses. It's a good question. I'll ask him next time I interview him. But that's the story behind that tuning. So, all right, those are all the questions I had. So, thank you everybody for submitting them. So before I get to the last album, I just also want to take this time to reflect back on, it's the 20th episode. This podcast has been, a true joy for me. I know it's been tough getting episodes out the last couple months. But, doing this podcast has meant the world to me. And the fact that I have people who, when I ask for questions, are able, write me and submit questions means that I am reaching some people. So I just want to take this time to say thank you if you've been listening, specifically this episode, since I'm just kind of blathering on for, an hour. But I just want to say thank you for, supporting this podcast, and, look forward to more of these episodes in 2015. I'm not giving up. It may be tough to get episodes out there, but, this, I want to keep doing this, and, they may be sparse until I get into a new groove, but, just, subscribe on iTunes, subscribe on Stitcher, and you'll be the first to hear once there's a new episode, coming in. So with that, I just want to say thank you, and, thank you to all the guests I've had over the last 20 episodes. It's really been a joy. And I look forward to more guests and more fun in the future. But now, let's wrap it up with some more music. So this, no surprise, the last album I'm going to promote for 2014, I devoted an entire month to it. Coffins on IO by Kayo. This album, as someone who was in the band, even when I was in the band, I always kind of felt like kind of an outsider, and more of a fan of what, Toby was doing musically. And, even though I was playing the music, I kind of approached it more of like, oh, okay. Discovering what he was doing musically and being a fan of that, as opposed to these are my songs and et cetera, because I wasn't the main composer in that band. So I've always kind of had this kind of fan approach to Modeled on the Well, Kayo over the years. And, I've been very proud of everything Kayo done. But I do have to say that of all their albums, Coffins on IO is the first one that, or I shouldn't say the first one. Coffins on IO is the one that has really moved me a lot. It's something I just had this kind of instant reaction to, and I love it. It's one of the best things I've heard in quite some time, and I'm really happy with what these guys have been up to and the kind of new musical territory they're trying to explore. I got to see them play a few weeks ago at Hampshire College. They did a show there, and you can just tell. And granted, the Hampshire crowd is a little more. I felt they were very into it and very receptive and very engaged with the music. So there was a lot of dancing and everything else going on during the music, and that just kind of added to the vibe. But there was just such a positive reaction to these new songs. And then, even a newer song, which isn't on any album yet, they played that, and that also brought a reaction. And, it kind of follows in the same kind of path as what they started to do on Coffins on IO. Also on Hubardo, there were some moments where you could see the kind of direction they were moving in. And so Coffins on IO, if you haven't checked it out yet, do yourself a favor, check it out. One of the best albums I've heard ever. And with that, I will leave you with the first song off Coffins on IO called The Mortality of Doves. And thank you for everything. Thank you for a great 20 episodes. And here's to 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 more.
Tumbles down Keep